Welcome to Mac and Bleu, where we introduce you to who is building Arizona, bringing you the people and businesses that shape the landscape around us. From economic development and developers, underwriters and lenders, architects and engineers, to the very builders and suppliers that bring it all together. Now let's join our hosts, Robert Johnson and JJ Levensky, aka Mac and Bleu.
Welcome to Mac and Bleu, Building Arizona. I'm JJ Levinsky, president and co-founder of Blue Wave General Contracting. Running solo today and have some cool guests today. We have Jason Roth, CEO of Payroll Experts, and George Dorsey, sales aficionado, business development, and on the hot seat for not filling out the form, according to Jason. So, but it's all good.
Perfect.
But again, with Payroll Experts. So, if I remember right, George, who introduced us?
It was Joe over at Constructors.
Joe Clarkin.
Joe Clarkin, yep.
Joe's a connector. For
He
all those
is,
of you
yes.
that know him in town. We haven't had, on Mac and Blue, we haven't had anyone in your background. So this is good because all companies need payroll, right? Mm-hmm. Some do it in-house, some do it outside. I know, George, when you and I talked originally, kind of describing market share as far as where you guys are. We can get into that more in the discussion. But I thought it would be very, when you reached out, it was like, oh, perfect. We got to get you guys on to educate everyone in our space about what you guys are doing, not only for selling Payroll Experts, but, you know, the grander scheme of things in your world, so to speak. I know that on our side of the fence in the construction world, we see where a lot of our partners just are uneducated about a lot of things. So if nothing else, if we can just kind of approach a bunch of subjects today and give that guidance and, you know, resources and all those kind of things. But before we dive into that, if I can, let's get a little background on each one of you. Jason, if you don't mind going first, just kind of life story. I don't need to go back to your resume on college, frat house type stuff.
Right,
but
right. I'll skip right over that. Well, maybe I won't. So, my father was a fireman in New York City, in the busiest firehouse in New York City, actually, Engine 290 in East New York, and it was always I was going to be a fireman. And every fireman in New York has another job. You know,
Right.
So the way you were able to schedule it, you could, the family accountant, the family attorney, our plumber, our, anything was, anyone ever worked with us were all firemen. So I figured I'd go down that path. But my mom kind of begged me to go to college, and I ended up doing that, which probably saved my life because for sure I would have been in South Manhattan on 9/11, and you know how that probably would have turned out. So
thanks, Mom.
Yeah, thank you, Mom. I don't thank her often enough for that. Anyway, so, I thought I might work on Wall Street or something exciting like that. I definitely wanted to stay in New York, but did an internship at a startup company that was a payroll service. I think I was the 8th employee, and they had, a couple hundred clients. It was just a job. I had to pay for school. So when I got out of school, Wall Street was a disaster at the time, and I ended up working there full time. It was supposed to be temporary, and ended up being 20 years at that company.
Oh, wow.
And we grew from 8 employees and a couple hundred clients to about $125 million in revenue. I think about 1,100 employees when I left, 27,000 clients. I opened offices for them all over the country and so over the years, and really did everything. So, I worked in the tax department, which I hated, worked in operations, ended up working in sales for a long time too, but kind of a generalist. So I didn't open an office, help grow it, do the operations, kind of do everything all over the country. So that company was based in Miami. I opened an office in Midtown Manhattan for them when they got a little bigger and raised a little bit of money. Then they moved me out to Phoenix. I think I probably either opened or was involved in acquisitions and maybe 18 different markets, everything from Seattle, Southern California, Chicago, really mostly all over the West Coast.
So how long have you been in Phoenix then?
Been here just over 20 years.
Oh, so you're a native almost.
Right.
By the new Arizona standards.
It's true.
So what's is there anything unique or secretive about Jason?
Ooh.
Oh, it looks at me.
Well, I mean, that you can share on the podcast. Leave the Folsom Prison days out of it,
right.
but anything.
No, I have a pretty clean criminal background, meaning I never
All right, how about a hobby?
I never got
how about
caught.
something fun
I
hobby
mean,
wise?
I can. You work with your wife every day, and you
That's-
guys manage to stay, and you're celebrating your 6th wedding anniversary. You're still married. She's our
That's true.
president.
That's
Oh,
true.
cool.
Yeah,
And we met in payroll.
and they met in payroll. That's a good story.
Hold it. That's got to violate about 10 other HR
Right.
policies, right?
I thought so, and then they told me the story, and I was like, "This isn't as cool as I thought this was going to be."
It's like The Office all over again.
Yeah, we told you the cleaned up version is why
Good,
it's
keep-
not as
keep-
cool
keep
as
there.
right. I'm sorry.
Let's not look at it as TikTok and Instagram, right?
Right, I hired her, and well, it's true. I hired her right out of college a while ago, and there was nothing going on. But yeah.
All right.
So
So then, dovetail in current CEO of Payroll Experts. Are you guys local, national, regional? What?
So we're local. We're based here in Scottsdale, but we do have clients in all 50 states, and we have offices in South Florida and an office in, we shut down the office. Everyone went remote in Colorado.
Okay.
So we expanded to having a presence in Colorado.
Okay. George, how about you? Little
Yes,
background.
my story is not as exciting as you. I was not going to be a firefighter.
Then make something up.
Yeah, right. So it's funny. I actually got into sales by my father pushing me into it. I went to ASU for construction management.
Oh, geez.
I was
Here
going to
we
get
go.
into the construction management. I was like, I want to be in construction. Took one engineering class and was like, oh God, no, this is not for me. So my father looked at me in the eye and goes, told you, just go into sales. Go with your business degree and call it a day.
What was it, the hangover or the math?
It was
Which
the
one?
math for
Okay.
sure. The hangover's fine. You can deal with that all day long. It's the fact of you're asking me to do what with an angle?
Yeah.
But I was always super interested in construction. So it was one of those I jumped around, got out of college, went into payroll on accident. I tripped and fell into it. Some recruiter called me and was like, hey, we're going to offer you this salary. You're going to offer me how much to do what? I'll start tomorrow kind of thing. And then bounced around a little bit and ended up at a big payroll, not big, a local payroll company that specializes in construction, prevailing wage, time and attendance, all that. Stayed there for 8 years, helped build this company from, I was employee number 35 when we were doing $4 million in revenue. To the time I left, it was $50 million in revenue and 400 some employees and over thousands of clients, and just realized how much I loved the construction world and kind of built my niche around doing payroll and all that good stuff for construction. So I just kind of tripped and fell into this world of, it's how I'm here now. It's how we're sitting across from each other.
Via Joe, right?
Yeah, via Joe.
You know those
So I
darn,
tripped and fell into that relationship too.
those darn bonding guys, right? Yeah. Okay, so the topics and the things that you guys deal with day in and day out. We in the construction space, I think we're all, I should say that, that's an overstatement. I think we could all be better educated in what you guys do and in your services. So let's fire away, Jason. What day in and day out, start off with like a couple big rocks of what do you consistently see when people come to you with problems? Let's go the problem part first, and we come back to more of the proactive part, right? When people consult with you and say, "Oh my gosh, these are my problems," what are the biggest ones that you guys see day in and day out?
People often come to us because of efficiency issues, like this is cumbersome and I have to do this or that, and dealing with my employees or payroll, and can you help make it easier? And that's not unimportant, but is that a double negative? It's important.
I
but-
understood it, so,
Yeah, I got
but
it.
I'm a
Thank you.
Pollock, so I can understand anything.
But pretty much any business we go into, including large publicly traded, we discover that the compliance issues are so complicated nowadays and almost impossible to follow. So that ends up being more important. If you're out of compliance in some area, that can get you in trouble with the IRS or the state Department of Labor. Those things will eventually get you. And I've been in this business for a really long time, and unfortunately, I've seen them get companies, put them out of business. And I'm not big on scare tactics, and it's
Right.
almost impossible to follow everything, nowadays, all the state and federal rules, the taxation rules, the Department of Labor rules. And then on top of it, some employees suing you for, it's not necessarily a Department of Labor kind of issue, although it could be, and it just destroys you. So we kind of look at that first, compliance, and then call it liability, and not to make a short story long, but
Go ahead.
there's a few industries, and I've seen it because I've moved around the country, and my first stint in that startup company was out of Miami. And it was when Florida was really starting to take off, especially like South Beach and Miami. I moved down there when the Miami Hurricanes just started being good, back in the
Hold it. Before probation number. Oh, no, I was just sorry.
Right.
We're talking Ken Dorsey era.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, before that,
Erickson,
actually.
Dennis
but
Erickson.
I mean, the point is,
You're
all
not
of a
even
sudden,
old enough to remember that, George. What are you talking about?
He was ASU's coach. He was
Okay,
an old
sorry.
grandpa, though. That's
All
it's
right.
besides the point.
Miami started as a city started to take off, and all of a sudden there's these high-profile restaurants, and hospitality was a big thing. So places like Joe Stone Crabs, I'll mention that name, and they ended up being a client of ours. Some others I won't mention because I'll tell you the story of another large, really well-known restaurant, because the IRS decided we have an opportunity here to go after in the Department of Labor. It's this growing market. No one's following the rules. So what we're going to do is hire a bunch of agents in South Florida and start just auditing people and going in. And we had a client that just wasn't doing their payroll right, and we kept insisting. We actually had to bend the rules of the system. Didn't want them to do it that way. Wanted them to do it right, and they insisted. So we made an exception for them in the system. And fast forward like 3 years, the Department of Labor walks in and dings them. I don't know if an employee turned them in or what happened. It ended up being they had to go back 7 years, calculate back pay to employees. It's a restaurant now, so most of those employees are nowhere to be found.
Long gone.
Right. So they had to hire private detectives. They had to calculate what they owed them with interest, hire private detectives who could try to make a reasonable effort to find people, really very close to put them out of business. Construction and hospitality are similar in that way, and I guess I don't want to make a generalization, but I'm very focused on their craft is how I would say it. And this was a high-end restaurant, by the way, and not so focused. The owners are very often, they're craftsmen. In a restaurant, they're a chef, and in construction, they're a craftsman. And so they're artists in a way and pay less attention to the rules and sometimes the regulations. And that makes them easy targets for the Department of Labor and the IRS because the fines and penalties is what they're looking to collect on that. And found, I ended up spending months with them. We actually gave our services away for free to help them stay afloat. And I spent months in their offices helping them kind of piece things back together. I don't think we charge them for any of that.
Don't get any ideas, listeners. He doesn't work for free anymore.
No, definitely not.
George might, but not Jason.
But I feel like Phoenix is very similar in a lot of ways to the way Miami was back then. It still has been under-regulated, which for me is a good thing.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of regulation. Let me make that straight.
I think most of the listeners would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm seeing more and more of the same kind of thing. So we've seen it with some of our own clients here. We try to head that off. So based on that example of an experience and a ton of others like it, it's what we do that's a little bit different. We're not just trying to, get you to sign the order form. Like there are clients we turn away. Like I don't want clients anymore who aren't going to follow the rules. We'll walk away from those clients, but we really harp on, we're going to get you in compliance. We'll make sure, we'll at least let you know what you're dealing with, right? So maybe you can't do things overnight to fix situations, but if you're taking steps to fix them, it makes a big difference if you do get in trouble. They see you're trying to fix it. And we put a plan together to help people kind of look at the biggest risk items and get it on track.
Maybe let's back up a little bit because I'm trying to make sure I'm trying to think like a listener would as far as if I'm a business owner listening to you guys and wanting to know all the different, I'm going to call them verticals. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if I can, let's back up a little bit, Jason and George, and help us and the listeners define the different verticals that a company like you guys typically offer. Like, do you start even at an onboarding? Do you guys do HR stuff? And then, so there could be the onboarding, the screening, then the payroll, then, and then there's these other verticals after the fact. So let's give a kind of a more holistic viewpoint of what your industry currently is doing, and then let's whittle it down into maybe more construction specific stuff. So can you guys help me give that broad based? Either
You
one.
can go ahead. I'll speak to construction if you
I'm
want.
doing all the talking.
Go ahead.
But
You're the CEO.
Yeah.
when we're looking at a company, we look at everything you just described, from applicant tracking to onboarding of employees, benefit administration, payroll, of course, and all of that, pension management, so their 401k and things like that, offboarding employees, and workforce management's a big part of it. So keeping track of employees' time, I don't think people realize what a big deal that is. At the old school, we're going to have someone write it on, in construction, almost always what you're seeing is, a supervisor or foreman on the job kind of writing when people are coming and going.
Isn't it all done with apps now anyway?
Yeah.
For the most part. So how do you guys? What do you guys do? Promote your own, or do you try to work with, like, for instance, I know that like us as a GC, a lot of us use different project management software that tracks hours. Now we don't have trades per se on our payroll, so we typically aren't doing like by the hour, by the half hour type stuff, or a lot of the listeners probably are, if you think of like plumbers, electricians, HVAC, things like
the
that.
subs, yeah.
Right. So, but the point is do you usually work with their technology, or do you have to integrate your own?
We could do either. So if they have existing technology that's working for them, we could integrate with that.
Okay.
Oh,
Because then it's
very-
just exported via
Yeah, I
data.
mean, if it's working for them and they're in compliance and it's helping them with that, we just integrate with it.
Okay.
Right, so we're agnostic in that way. We offer all of it, and we think we offer best in class in all of it, from specifically workforce management, but everything, payroll, HR, all of that. But it's pretty common. They have an existing time and attendance system. People are, keeping track of time. They may even have an existing HR system, and they just want us to do time management and payroll. We'll integrate with kind of anything, really. But specifically on the construction side, there's a lot of job costing.
The labor distribution, prevailing wage.
distribution.
I mean, most construction companies have a time and attendance solution, and then they have their accounting software. And then they need someone like us to kind of complete that puzzle to be in the middle, to where, can you help my employees with benefits? Can you help do the 401k? Can you help do all the garnishments, levies, child support? Can you help make all these things move? Because we're collecting the data. Then can you take all that data, push it together, shove the information we need out to our accounting software, and then stick everything else where it needs to go? The distributions, the health benefits, all that good stuff. Like, we have a construction company I just met with today, and they're like, hey, we have our time and attendance and we have our accounting software, but we need help with all the stuff in the middle. Like, where do we onboard? Can we do our job costing? Can you help us with our prevailing wage? Can you do our 1047s? Can you do all these things for us? And that's where we kind of come in and complete it, where they're kind of, like, I call it building a puzzle, where they have the pieces and we're helping kind of connect everything to make it work, like an octopus.
Torrey Contracting, your full-service Division 9 contractor. Torrey Contracting operates with a smaller, hands-on team. This cohesive structure results in superior workmanship and economical solutions. We deliver projects with unsurpassed commitment to quality and stewardship of budget. Torrey Contracting, small enough to listen, big enough to deliver.
So the obvious question, and again, you guys don't have to answer these because I'm going to zing you with all sorts of questions because everyone's going to ask you anyway. Yeah. How do you guys monetize that? Is it fee? Is it percentage? Is it retainer? Like, how do you guys make money doing that where it's not too high, too low, where it's market driven? What's the secret sauce?
It's per employee per month kind of price.
So
it's a few
rate.
dollars per
It's a
employee
fee.
per month.
It's a fee.
Yeah,
It's a fee.
It's a fee.
They're paying us a
Right.
fee per head.
And has that been the norm in the industry?
That's the industry, yeah.
Is there any? Is that going to continue, or are there any changes on the in the future?
The reason it's that way is not, and it's evolved quite a bit over the years. So they're still, in the employee leasing or the PEO industry, they're generally charging a % of payroll.
And that's where I was going, Jason. Yeah.
Yeah, I no one really likes that.
No.
And we've gone from, hyper specific for every little service. We're charging 5 cents for this and 8 cents for that. And people don't like that either. And so we make it really visible. This is all the things you're paying for, but we roll it into a simple, X per employee per month. People need to budget. They need to know what they're going to spend from month to month. And if you have a high and low season, you can do annual budgeting. If you have an estimate of how many employees you
sense.
have based on a simple X dollars per employee per month. And it's...
Well, yeah, I mean, even more for the construction world, margins are razor thin. So it's like we know, okay, if I have this many employees on the job, we're going to pay this much for our payroll costs. Here's how much our labor costs us.
Right.
So that we do it like that too. So then you can, as Jason said, you can budget more of like than having it be like a PEO. You'd be a variable cost. Well, it's percentage. Well, if I give someone a raise on the job, well, now you're paying more.
You answered that brilliantly, George, because that's what every business owner or manager wants to hear. If they can get that fixed cost versus the variable, then they can manage to it. Okay, let's go back. That was good. Good little tangent. Let's go ahead and go back to those different verticals because I want to eventually go back to the onboarding. I think there's a lot of questions there, but I cut you off, Jason, when we got to the offboarding. What are the other trends in your industry as far as like a company like you, those value-added services? What are we as consumers demanding out of you guys to give more and more of?
It's most of what we see that the biggest thing is integrations, what George talked about before. Okay. And we don't want to, that if something's working for you and it, we want to integrate with it and make it smooth between the systems. So if you have an existing system keeping track of employees' hours, you shouldn't have to key employees into two systems. You shouldn't have to key the hours into a payroll system. That's just one part of it, but also accounting system. So we can push back out all the labor costs by job, by department, by almost anything.
Yeah, I'm sure you can distill it down as granular as you want.
It really depends on what the company's doing today. So based on their accounting system and how they keep track of everything, we will give it an integration into their accounting system out of the payroll system. For most businesses, labor is if not the first, it's the second highest expense. And tracking that properly is important.
So going back to the beginning then with, we're all super blessed, specifically in construction in the valley right now. Demand is high, supply is low, which does that put a burden and an onus on you guys? Are you guys getting more into the recruiting side, or have you always been there?
I would say this about that, and that's the piece I hadn't mentioned. So, employee engagement is super, super important. And there's two things there. If your employee needs to change their address or change their taxes, giving them technology so they don't have to go fill out some paper form or send an email, change my direct deposit or my address or whatever. So we provide all of that, which does engage employees from the onboarding process going forward. They can see their stubs, they can see their taxes, they can make changes if the company allows it.
Okay.
So that's one part. But more and more the compliance thing that I talked about, and I'm not just talking about, no one cares about tax calculations, not on employees anyway, usually.
No.
But they do care about making sure that you're following Department of Labor regulations, overtime rules and those other work rules. So I think we do a lot. This is not. It really is consultative. We don't charge for it though, and telling companies, if you want to compete for employees, which everyone's doing now, you're trying to get employees, you're trying to keep employees, and it's not so easy now with 3.5% unemployment rates. So it's another arrow in the quiver, say, for companies to be in compliance and doing the right things, and we're actually working on something that would be a scoring that's for the company, but we think it could be more universal, and maybe I shouldn't share this. But
share it.
You're popular. Come on.
Share it. It's cool. I just learned about this about 2 weeks ago.
It's because of my experience and all that I've gone through and seeing companies get into trouble in one way or another over all these years. I wanted to make some kind of, so we already do this. We go in and we do an evaluation and we're keeping an eye on our clients. Are you in compliance? Are you efficient? Even is another part of it. I thought about doing something similar to a credit score kind of scoring. But, more important than the score, is everything that follows that, right? So if your credit score is 830, you don't necessarily need to pay attention to what you can do better. But if your credit score is 600, then maybe you read everything underneath and it tells you what you need to do to improve your credit score. Same kind of deal. So and this would talk to like the C-suite of a company. We got a high score. I know my HR department is in compliance and doing a good job, and they don't want to get into the details, right? And it also includes efficiencies. But so you're efficient, you're in compliance. But if you're an employee looking for a job, I would rather work for a company with a high credit score, right, or a high workforce management score, right? So it would help you retain employees. There's so much turnover, and what I see a lot of is from my friends and family and people I know. They go get another job because they're really good at marketing their company, and they can recruit them and convince them. And they get over there, it's not so great, but there's no real way to quantify that. And what I'm talking about would help you. Why would you leave a company that's got a really high score? It's the best you can do. So
it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and that's a big thing is trying to get and retain employees. And we try to put in systems that help employees, but we also are looking for more creative ways like I just described.
That's good.
It's a secret.
George, you said you dive deeper into the construction related.
Yeah.
What nuances are you seeing in that?
The biggest thing I'm seeing right now, especially because most construction, especially subs, they have a small office located somewhere. It could be out of someone's house. It could be
the truck.
It could be anywhere. Yeah, exactly. But every time I talk to a client, a sub, anyone, they're like, look, we have one person pushing a ton of paper around. Can you just make the onboarding changes, anything they need to do, clocking in, anything just on an app? So that way I can say, hey, JJ, you're starting tomorrow. I'm sending you a link. Go on your phone, fill out everything you need. It comes back to me. We're done. JJ can start. Fill everything out Sunday. He can start Monday on the job. So that is the biggest thing. And I'm seeing for time and attendance wise, geofencing a job site. Instead of being like the guy working where I'm going to clock in at Circle K getting a Slurpee before I start, can you make sure that you geofence that job site so that way my guys can only clock in when they're there instead of being all over the place. Because right now, we've all seen a timesheet. Weird that 30 guys are all working 8 to 5.
Or I've heard a lot of where, especially in the larger, like a service-based business, where some are clocking in before, like the minute they leave their house, and that might be against policy where it's, like you said, back to the geofencing where it really starts at their first appointment. And then, yes, they get paid between, but, then when they're last one, they clock out, that kind of thing. Yeah. So there's also different scenarios going around in the different variables of construction and service. So I think that's important.
Like I had an HVAC company in the Valley, one of the bigger ones, who was like, hey, I want my guys to clock in when they get to each house so I can just see where they've been and I can know that I can do the
efficiency
job costing.
Ratings.
Just I can just kind of see it all. It's not a tracking thing, but I want to make sure like if they're at JJ's house, I'm at JJ's house. I'm at the Roth house. I'm at the Roth house. Like that they're doing the things that they're supposed to be because they had guys that were supposedly somewhere, but they were at the bar next door to the place playing billiards. And
maybe that was at my house.
Probably right. But that's what I see is the ability and adaptability to be on the phone. It's just everything needs to be mobile optimized. You need to do it because there might be a job site in Flagstaff and the office is in Phoenix. So that doesn't make sense to send the paperwork back and forth or having someone drive it an hour and a half. It's let me hire the guys, we'll do the job, get you paid, and either you're done or we'll move you on to the next job.
Go ahead, Jason. You were going to say something.
I was just going to add that with the technology, it's really cool because it also pins the employee where they clock in and out. So no one's looking at all those pins. But if you are questioning, this guy doesn't seem right, you could actually go click on each punch and see on a map exactly where they were when they clocked in and out.
I'm going to go down a different little scenario only because before I go down this topic, I want to convey that I know nothing about this, but. But it came up in a conversation, I think, about 2 weeks ago, and I think it intrigues me because I think it falls a little bit into how you guys are doing compliance. So back to the labor shortage and back to everything that's happening on the southern border of the legitimate people that want to be up here working. And I was talking to another contractor here, like I said, about 2 weeks ago, and they were just like, wow, if there's a way that we could help the legitimate ones get through all those, and I forget all the acronyms, the different work visas and things like that. What what do you guys see from your end, the challenges and what are the opportunities moving forward? Because, I don't care which side of the political aisle you're on, we got to figure something out, or we just don't have enough people. So what do you guys see, and what can you talk about in that aspect?
Yeah, I guess I have a little bit of a unique perspective on this. So my brother, I wanted to be a fireman. He wanted to be a cop. And he ended up being a lawyer working for Homeland Security in D.C.
Well, let's sit back. Here's an hour.
Right, there you go. Chief Counsel's Office in Immigration. So
Wow.
I would suggest he's the foremost expert in the entire country on immigration law. He retired a couple of years ago, and I brought him on as our in-house counsel. And we talk a lot about trying to help clients, navigate this kind of situation. But you're kind of a victim of if you're an employer, especially construction or again hospitality. There's a lot of parallels. You got to follow the rules, or it's super high profile, right? The bigger the company, and we've seen it here in town with CEOs, and owners got arrested. I won't mention any names for trying to work around the system and helping employees get fake IDs and things like that so they can hire them. It's not easy. There is things you can do, but it's pretty onerous. So you can apply for visas for employees, and you can do those kind of things, but that's expensive, right? And you need to sponsor the employee, which means
Sponsoring, that's the key piece, right?
Right. So you need to guarantee them a job at prevailing wage and all of that. It's how do you guarantee someone a job? Right? I need 50 employees, tomorrow on this work site, and I don't know who I'm going to get. It's a big line of people, and I'm not going to. How am I going to guarantee them a job and spend all that money to sponsor them, to do all the paperwork and everything that goes with that? So we actually, we talked about packaging a solution for clients, but I don't think it would fit in the construction site because it's not. It's a longer term thing, and it's expensive per employee. Immigration attorneys that you see them advertising, they're pretty sleazy from my experience. Sorry, but but to legitimately do all the paperwork could be done for less money, but still, it's not. There's no easy way to do it, and for the low skilled worker. Or even a skilled worker in construction, unless you're willing to sponsor them, meaning you're guaranteeing them a job for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
They got to come up with some guest worker program or some other way to normalize workers coming in. Even day worker programs would be a great idea along the border.
Has your brother said anything about that at all? I mean, just in concept. I mean, as much as he's been exposed to it. I'm just saying, has there been table talk even at the Roth house?
No, there's a ton of it. Absolutely, there's a ton of it.
What is it, the SB 1070 or something, where you can bring in laborers for an extended amount of time, but then you have to sponsor them. And I know it's a very arduous process where you have to do. I have a landscaper that I'm going to be bringing on as a client, and they asked us the same thing. And they have a girl just during the 3 months that they're here that works 40 hours a week just processing paperwork, just to bring in the workers from Mexico to have them work for 3 months, and then they go back. And it's
just on the work visa stuff.
It's like SB 1070, I believe, or something.
Yeah, there's so many acronyms.
I don't know exactly what it is, but it's SB something.
Well, it was like with the hospitality industry for years, and I know I don't want this to sound racist, but when everyone was hiring all the Filipino people for the hospitality, or it doesn't matter where you come from, it was the HB1 or whatever, the different ones. So
I moved here from New York, and it's only a couple of years ago I stopped wearing suits. And I walk into the kitchen of a restaurant, and half the people would run out the back door. Certainly they looked nervous.
I can see.
Why are you yelling at me not to wear a suit?
I love it.
Right. Yeah, it's a bad situation for sure right now, and they're all lying for political reasons.
Yeah.
And maybe I shouldn't.
No, that's fine.
So, when President Trump was trying to cancel DACA, right, and it got struck down by the Supreme Court. My brother, and I'm not, so he told me that if he wanted to cancel DACA, he easily could have. The Supreme Court, if you read the ruling, says you didn't do the right paperwork. The president obviously has the best attorneys in the country, including my brother, who can do the right paperwork. They didn't want to cancel DACA. They wanted to look like they're trying to cancel DACA. So he just didn't do the paperwork. They basically said, take the right steps and file the right paperwork. And I'm sure I'm not doing justice to this, but if he really wanted to, so much that's happening. We need the workers. So much that's happening is all political.
Right.
That they're saying things that people want to hear on either side, but they're not solving the problem. They're trying to get elected.
Yeah. No, and that, sensitive topic, but hey, it's on the table. We all there isn't a construction company in town that if you don't go into, we all need more workers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if call it what you want, if the indigenous, whatever, when I say indigenous, that's the wrong word. If our existing populace can't do it, it's like capitalism at its finest, right?
Absolutely.
You will always, something will prevail. It's like, hold it. Supply is, or demand is this and supply is this. Capitalism will always bridge that gap every time, right? That's all we're talking about.
It's clear living coming from Miami in the 80s that, it was the Cuban community that made that city. Absolutely. Right. So the first generation that came over on the boat, they were still entrepreneurs, but they were fixing cars and they were starting businesses when they came over. The second generation took it to a whole different level professionally. And some of the most brilliant people that now the third generation are doctors and lawyers, and a big part of the success of Miami clearly is that group of people who came in and they needed it, and it paid off for the city.
True.
So,
back to where were we on the different verticals that an organization like Payroll Experts or your fraternity of industry provides. Talk about the offboarding a little bit. I think people forget about that a lot. What does that typically entail, and what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's depending on the state you're in, there's regulations for final paycheck. Do you have to pay unused PTO if people have earned it? How quickly do you need to pay someone you've terminated? And then if they have benefits, 401k or anything else, all that needs to be handled. You got to turn it off. And you got to do it right. So it's not unusual to see a company that has terminated employees that didn't get terminated on their health insurance. They're getting billed for them it's expensive.
Yeah.
So technology is a huge help in that area and keeping you from getting into trouble. But you kind of need to know the rules. So clients who are multi-state will often call us, hey, I need to terminate an employee. What do I need to do? We can set up all those rules in our system, so technology can help. We can have, California onboarding, Colorado offboarding, Arizona offboarding, because the states have different rules. So they'll have different checklists and different things that happen automatically. You just simply go in to the employee and say terminate, and it'll start a workflow of offboarding processes. Do you want to pay out the PTO or zero it out? Do you want to, turn off the insurance benefits and things like that? Disclaimers, warnings, notifications, all that is all fully automated so that one person that has to push around all that paper and probably makes a lot of mistakes.
Is now clicking buttons instead of, we build out what we call workflows. So it makes it to where the system is going to do all the heavy lifting. You just need to make sure if you do A, it's going to go to B. Once B is done, it goes to C. Once C is done, it goes to D. And it just goes down the line of here's the things you need to do. Here's the buttons you need to click. Here's the questions you need to ask. Once those are filled in, we can then either terminate or do whatever you're going to do with that employee.
And
separation occurs.
I mentioned it's a big benefit in recruiting employees to be doing things right. It's also a big benefit terminating employees to do things right.
Yes.
If you have a system, if you have, it looks professional and you're following a process, then employees know and they're less likely to sue you or go to the Department of Labor. We see a lot of that. Almost every company that has a Department of Labor audit that we see, it's clear some disgruntled employee went and filed a complaint. Anyone could do it. It just opens up a world of hurt. So having your act together and having systems and things like that just mitigates people from, thinking they can get you in trouble.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
Going back to another one then, if like let's use your landscaping friend. It's a great example. Let's say they said, "Hey, George, I want you guys to do the payroll, but can you help with the benefits?" Then do you help line up benefit providers as well, or do you have it in house?
We do not have it in-house, but we can. Like if a client comes to us and they're like, "Hey, we want to shop some benefits. Can you introduce us to some brokers?" Absolutely, I can do that. And then we can integrate with whatever system the broker is using to administer the benefits. As Jason said, we're open, so we can integrate with them just to push all that employee data back and forth to leverage and make the client's like experience very, very easy. So yeah, we don't do it in-house, but we have partners that we trust to say, "Hey, JJ, if you came to me and you're like, George, I know you did a really good job with the payroll and all the technology and everything. Do you have someone that can do benefits?" I would say yes. Here's 2 or 3 people. You kind of interview them and do what you need to do and find out who's the best fit for you.
Yeah, that's a whole profession, and
Oh, yeah.
it's tempting. I have my insurance license. I can get a commission, and I could just get clients to sign a letter, but I just couldn't do justice to what a solid broker can do for a company. So it's a lot of discipline to not go down that road. But
no, I respect that, Jason, and we're not here to be a judge or jury anyway. It's just, again, talking about the topics to make sure that as each listener is going, "Hey, how do I make this plunge?" Is that something that's part of that conversation, that dialogue? On that, though, I would ask either one of you, what are you seeing that like us as like let's say I own a construction company, I'm coming to you. What are you seeing that they're asking for as far as those value added things? Are there any changes in benefits that people are looking for when they're coming to you for the payroll portion? Or any of that stuff?
I would say the biggest thing we're seeing is, do you have enrollment in benefits? Do you have a Ben admin system or a benefit administration system that they can use on their mobile device?
It's all mobile and
all mobile and app because of the workforce is in the field. It's not doctors, lawyers, people sitting in an office where they can go onto a computer. This is how can I get the information to them and push out different information to them and have them do it on the phone. Rather than, "Hey, come, JJ, I know you're in Flagstaff doing a job, but I need you to drive an hour and a half down to my office so you can fill out all this paperwork and take 30 minutes to do all this where you just wasted 3 hours of driving."
So, thank you. Wonderful answer. I think you teed that up well. George, I'm going to go back to when you and I first talked on the phone. I think this would be very appropriate for a lot of the podcast space is that trepidation or the fear factor that I'm too small of a company. I can't afford you guys. It's a waste of my, I just got to have, no, this is going to sound bad. I'm just going to have Lucy do it because she's doing it part-time, right?
Yeah.
Give the listener a sense that because of the way that you saw how I asked the question earlier about the fee basis, that they can get value no matter how many, or maybe they can't. I mean, break it down into, is there a point where X amount of employees make sense to go to you or your industry, or give us a sense of what that looks like through numbers and logistics.
So just for me knowing the construction industry, I say if you're over 25 employees, you should probably start outsourcing because that puts you in a whole nother world of compliance than the companies that are 25 employees and under. Jason, you might see different because you've been in a lot longer. That's just kind of my 14 years of seeing construction and doing that. That's where I see kind of the magic number is the 25, because that's the government has almost drawn a line in the sand of once you hit 25, we're going to slap a whole bunch of other compliance and things on you, and you need to have health insurance and need to be ACA compliant, and you have to do all these other things, COBRA, when you before it wasn't.
You have to offer FMLA and crazy things like that. So now we generally deal with slightly larger companies, so typically 75.
75 is kind of the low end for us. Up to 2,500 is kind of where our sweet spot is.
Okay.
Just because our technology is so robust and so configurable that if we do give it to like a 25-man company, we're almost nuking that organization because they're like, oh my gosh, you can do so much stuff. We don't need any of this. So it's like, I'm like, perfect. There's plenty of other providers out there that are perfect for you. If you grow and get a little bigger, we're definitely there. And they'll kind of understand why as they start to go 25 to 50 to 75 to 100. They're starting all those little nuances as you grow. You're going to understand, oh, now I get why they do all these things because this is now either I'm going to hire someone to do it for me for a fraction of the cost, like a Jason or myself, or I'm going to have to hire 4 or 5 people to get this stuff done.
Right. No, but thank you for answering the question because whether you know it or not, you answered both ends of that spectrum. And so I think it's wonderful that you give people that 25 number. I think that's a great benchmarking. George, to you, what haven't I asked you specifically in the areas that you have expertise in?
So really, it's the prevailing wage, which I know is subcontractor world. That is huge. That's kind of the background I came from in payroll, and I know that is still a very massive, I guess, issue if you're doing it because there's a lot of regulations involved, there's a lot of paperwork involved, and say you do prevailing. Say, JJ, you just decided tomorrow I'm going to do the city of Phoenix, I don't know, build them a building.
Yep.
Okay, so now you're like, cool, what's next? And so it's very much, you have to pay the employees their hourly rate plus a prevailing rate, which on fringe rate, which is on top of that, but you have to tell whatever the governing body, if it's Maricopa County, if it's City of Phoenix, if it's State of Arizona, the United States, federal, whatever it might be, you have to tell them where every single penny has been allocated and what it's used for. Is it for 401k? Is it for health benefits? Is it extra pay? Where is it all going? Who's it being paid to? How are they getting it? And then you need to upload that into the software that the government tells you to do it. So is that LTP Tracker? Is that EMARS? Is that Elation? What might that be? Which some people are like, hey, they're going to probably get cross-eyed. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. But if you do it, you're like, oh my gosh, I get it. So that's kind of where we can leverage technology to help a ton. And that's where I truly see it is companies that are doing a lot of prevailing wage work. Okay, because you're like, cool, you can do payroll and you can hire Mary to do your payroll. But if you're doing prevailing wage work, there's now a whole another gamut of paperwork and things you need to do that you might not even know of. Because no one tells you. It's not like you can take a class and someone's like, here's how you deal with the government and your prevailing wage.
We don't, at least for Blue Wave, we don't do it. But I remember back in my younger days, we did it all the time, and it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But the good thing about it is the government pays their bills. You don't have to worry about them going out of business.
Right.
And that's what I've heard from all my clients that do it. They're like, oh yeah.
No, once you master the art or partner with someone like you guys, then it's
I had an ex-client who was an electrician in the Valley. The one lady was spending 40 hours a week doing just their prevailing wage stuff, getting the paperwork right, filing it, uploading it, all the calculations, everything, you name it. She finally went outsourced payroll and finally got someone that understood it. We took her to 10 minutes. Just by leveraging.
Did she give you a fruitcake that Christmas?
She almost fell out of her seat when we showed. She's like, "Oh my gosh, you can actually yes." I'm like, "Yes, if you leverage the technology properly, it can get it done."
George, will you marry me?
Be like, pass.
Come on now.
No, I'm just kidding. But
no, that's great.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of on that?
Jason, anything?
Anything with unions is very similar. Coming out of New York and California and Chicago and places like that, I have a good amount of experience dealing with the unions. And it is actually very similar. The reporting requirements and keeping track of very often they have their own prevailing wage. They have their own benefit packages you're forced to require, and then the reporting can be a nightmare. So government work with unions involved is lucrative and safe, but you better be following the rules.
I mean, even to piggyback that, even companies that aren't doing prevailing wage, when they have to do their time and attendance, I mean, as we talked about, margins are razor thin. So there's very few companies that can get in the amount of detail we can with the time and attendance to go down to the penny of this is what your employee is costing you and do that reporting for people. Because construction companies, everyone in that manufacturing, construction, hospitality, they all want to know that's their biggest cost is labor. What is this job actually costing me?
Well, their biggest loss runs are there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, as an owner, I can tell you that.
Yeah. People clocking in an hour early, clocking in
we
when
always
they
use
and it's
leave their
not,
house.
and you find, the irony is, and I think this is a good discussion. 90% of the time, it's not malicious, right? They're just, it's subconscious, right? So, but if I'm an owner, what I want is I want the data to be able to go here, Bob or Sue. What is, I'm not out to get you, but there's obviously, look at George here is got a 90% utilization rate and you're only at 60%.
Yep.
What gives? Because you seem like a great person, right? The data is what you can now go to them. Without the data, though, you look like a subjective jerk, right?
Right.
And objectively, all we want is making sure that we're not losing money with employee X. We want them to make money, but we want them to make us money too, right? And
Absolutely,
so that like you were saying, the data is what can drive an objective discussion to find out what is their encumbrance, if you will, to help them kind of get over that hurdle. Then fine, if it just wasn't meant to be, if they're just a bad employee, then off board and get rid of them. But 9 times out of 10, you're finding that it's some little nuance, some little subtlety there of, they didn't know, they didn't understand the policy, they didn't understand that lunch is 30 minutes, not an hour, things like that. But you can't do it without that information.
Well, yeah, and to be on the flip side to something positive instead of a negative, you now know who your A, B, C, and D crews are. So if you have a big job coming up, you're like, okay, we need it done at this certain amount of time. George and his guys can get it done in a quarter of the time for a quarter of the price, but they do just as good of a job. Let's get them on it so we can get this client happy.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
It's the same. Yeah. Or I have a pool contractor who goes, I want to know what my labor costs are because I want to know if a client calls me with a 30,000-gallon pool and they want to pour it and do it. I want to know I can be on the phone and give them a range, but within a 10% window because I know what my material costs are. I want to know exactly what my labor costs are. So that's what he's like. I like to know to the penny what my labor costs are. So when a client calls me, I can be like, oh yeah, it'll be 12 grand, 25 grand, whatever it might be. And it could just be one of those. And we can just bang through all these things rather than let me get you a bid and let me take 12 years to figure it out. Like, I'd rather be like, hey, time is money. So I'd rather, he goes, I want to make money. So he goes, the faster I dig holes and pour concrete, the faster my company's making money. So he's, I don't want to waste time in the bidding of, well, let me get back to you in 4 days. And then you never get that bid. And it's just, hey, I have it right here for you. Here's your cost. Let's move.
It's a great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, back to you. Kind of same question I started with George. What haven't I asked you specific about what you want, what the story you want to tell of either your industry, payroll experts specifically, or what topics haven't we covered that are very important for you?
There's been such a shift with technology, but the flip side and what you both just alluded to, and keeping it positive, these things that you're tracking, I think when you're tracking something, the employees are paying attention to it, and they very often rise to the occasion. You're reporting on it, you're tracking on it. It's the same thing with companies. Hopefully everyone gets lifted up as they see their competitors being more successful because they're using these systems to help them be efficient and be in compliance, and everyone starts doing it, and then hopefully the Department of Labor goes away and hires less people and audits less companies.
Fingers crossed.
Makes everyone's life less miserable.
Well, with that, gentlemen, we're probably going to wrap it up here. But thank you. First of all, very informative. I know we probably could have gone off on some other tangents and dug deeper, but I think as far as the broad-based background, it was just what this show needed and a kind of a change of some of the topics that we've been covering lately. But how do people get a hold of you if you have any questions? So, George, start with you. Like LinkedIn, where's the easiest way to reach out to you?
LinkedIn, all my contact info's on there. Everything's up to date. If they really need to talk to me, cell phone, it's all on there. They can feel free to call me anytime, text me. No big deal.
And Jason is
same thing. LinkedIn. You can go to our website, find our phone numbers and all of that as well. So call me, email me, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
So again, George Dorsey, Jason Roth with Payroll Experts, and thanks, gentlemen, for being on today.
Thank you, JJ.
Thank you so much for having us.
You've been listening to the Mac and Blue Show, brought to you by Torrey Contracting and Blue Wave General Contracting. Be sure to subscribe to the Mac and Blue podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Follow Robert Johnson and JJ Levensky on LinkedIn and Instagram. Tune in live every first and third Thursday at 3 p.m. as we continue to introduce you to the people building Arizona. Walt Disney said, "You can dream, create, design, and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it requires people to make the dream a reality." Until next time, make it a great day.